guys, and welcome to One More Page, a podcast for lovers of kids' books.
Packed full of interviews, book reviews and industry gossip, not to mention the occasional fart joke, One More Page is your fortnightly foray into the world of children's books.
Whether you're a kid, mum, dad, author, illustrator, teacher, librarian, or just one of those people who never grew up, this is the podcast for you. So, let's meet your hosts.
I'm Kate, and I'm an Arian, which means I'm enterprising, spontaneous, daring, courageous, and energetic. But mostly, it means I just had a birthday, so feel free to send me cake.
I'm Liz and I'm cafe obsessed, although I can't understand why some cafes close at 3 o'clock. Doesn't anyone else want coffee at 5:30 in the afternoon?
And I'm Nat, and I only just discovered you can't hum while you're holding your nose. Seriously, try it. You're trying it, aren't you? See? Doesn't work. And this is...
One More Page!
Hi guys, today on One More Page we're talking about literary legends. Those amazing people who scribble away for hours on end, tour schools, speak at festivals, and who often don't get half the fame, glory or money that they deserve. Their stories enter our hearts, fuel our dreams, and sometimes change our lives. And hopefully they stick around for generations.
And in keeping with our theme, today we'll be talking to multi-award-winning author Deborah Abela, who in 2017 received a Koala Legends Award. In Kids Capers, we're reaching back into the past to find some legendary books from our own childhoods and introduce them to a new generation.
But first, it's shout-out time. If we were the Super Bowl, we'd charge $4.5 million for this slot. And finally, I could afford that backyard roller coaster I've been wanting. But instead, we're doing it all for the warm and fuzzies. Kate, what do you have for us this week?
Today I'd like to give a shout out to the Readings Children's Book Prize and its fantastic shortlisted authors. It's a relatively new prize on the kids' book scene. It was established in 2014 and recognises the best new Australian books written for kids aged 5 to 12. It celebrates books that families love reading together and aims to raise the profile of debut and on-the-rise Australian authors. There are 6 fantastic shortlisted titles this year, and the winner is due to be announced within the next week or two, so definitely keep your ears to the ground.
Yeah, it's a really great shortlist. There's some really big hits like Nevermore and Bronte Metalstone, and I'm really intrigued about the graphic novel that's made the list too, called Home Time. I haven't actually come across that one before. It sounds like a tough competition to judge, so I'm really looking forward to finding out the winner.
Yeah, there's some amazing talent there. And speaking of amazing talent, now it's time to talk to our special guest for the episode. We're going to have a chat to legendary author Deb Abela.
Deborah Abela is a true legend of the Australian children's book scene, with 25 children's books to her name, ranging from series like Ghost Club and Max Remy Super Spy to historical fiction Teresa, a New Australian that draws on her Maltese heritage. Deb's books cover a diverse range of topics and themes, and her fan base is huge. She regularly tours schools, she's an ambassador for Room to Read, and has won everything from the Maurice Saxby Award for her services to children's literature to a Koala Legend Award as voted by kids. We are extremely fortunate to have Deb with us on the show to learn more about her books and career. Hi Deb, thanks so much for joining us today on One More Page.
Hi Liz, I'm very excited to be here.
So a lot of people know you as a multiple award-winning children's author, but I'm wondering if you can share with us how your writing journey first began.
Oh, way back when I was 7, I was just so in love with books that I thought, this is what I want to do. But I was also a kid who grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, from a migrant family, way in the suburbs. And it was very much a time that I felt that not much was kind of expected of you, and particularly being a girl as well when I was really young. And so I remember having this dream but thinking it'll never happen, but wouldn't it be amazing? And then as I got older, it wouldn't let me go. And so I thought, no, I do really want to pursue this. I got a teaching degree first, and then I'm going to try not to make this answer super huge long, but I then after I got a teaching degree, went traveling for a while and came back and did a communications degree at UTS in Sydney. And that's when I thought, no, I'm really going to try and give this a shot. My first job was in telly, and I worked in fact, in the drama department at Network 10 and working on adult drama, which is all very serious and, very high stress. But I kept on seeing this woman walk past my office who had like armloads of toys and Easter eggs and all this kind of great stuff. And I thought, well, what job does she do? Because that looks way more fun than my serious job. And we got chatting, and she actually was the producer of a new kids show. And after, a few kind of months of sort of, chatting back and forth, she said, look, I really want to expand the show. Do you want to work in kids telly and writing for kids telly? And that's when it really clicked to me that I did want to be a writer, but I was in the wrong sort of area. And that's when I worked for 7 years. I had a job as the producer and writer of a kids TV show called Cheese TV at Network 10 that some people may remember. And that's when I knew I wanted to be a writer. And that's when I went home at night and wrote my very first kids novel.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. That's fun. I do remember Cheese TV. It's fun knowing you were behind it.
If you're over a certain age, you will remember Cheese TV because it hasn't been on air for a while. It was on air for about 10 years, and it was just a super fun way to practice writing every single day because there were 6 shows a week that had to go to air. So you had to write every single day, and which is something I don't do now, and I wish I had more kind of stamina at. But it was such good practice for writing for kids.
I can imagine. So your books for kids cover a wide range of topics and genres, from mystery to sports series, historical fiction to humour, and I'm interested in knowing if you lean towards one of those in particular.
It's funny because it is exactly right what you say. The genres, I seem to sort of jump genres, but for me, when I look at all my books, they're kind of the same in that there are kids who've been put in a situation, often not of their making, and sometimes it's quite frightening, and they just have to work out, how do I get through this? How do I survive? How do I, look after myself and my friends? And so my stories really are, they're kid-centric, they're kid-focused, and they're all about kids who don't feel like they're the hero and don't feel like they're the ones who should be wielding the swords. But if they don't do it, no one else is going to. So when I look at my books, from Wolves to Spies to Soccer Legends, I just think that's kind of what they're doing. It's kids finding their way and finding their way to stand up.
Yeah, fantastic. You also have a picture book, Wolfie the Unlikely Hero, illustrated by Kona Breakin. I'm wondering how you found the experience of working on that project after writing so many novels, and also if you've got any more picture books on the horizon.
It was completely different to writing a novel. I think I've written about 24 novels or something so far, and each one, they're big projects. You have a lot of time to work on them. They start as these tiny little vague ideas and that you then kind of try and tease out to be some kind of interesting and engaging story. And I had the most amazing editors, and I've had the same editors for most of my books now. And so you kind of on your own, then you hand it over and they look at it and they give you advice, and you come back and then you're kind of on your own again. So a lot of the decisions that are made with the novel are down to me, and hopefully what I think is the best way to go forward as directed by my editors. A picture book feels like I'm just one person in many, many people who've got hands in the pie and have different attitudes and different ideas of what should happen. So the other thing I really found difficult was that the illustrator and the author, so Connor and I, never met. We never spoke to each other, and we were deliberately kind of kept away from each other because the publisher wanted to be the conduit of all the ideas and sort of have the lead hand on it. And I found that really difficult because in a way, writing a novel, it is on my shoulders, but in a really collaborative way. And I can constantly ring my editor and say, I just don't know what to do with this character or why this section's not working, and we'll sort of tease it out together. And I do have a couple of different ideas for picture books, but they constantly keep getting pushed aside because I've got different ideas for novels. They're the ones that seem to kind of bubble to the top of the list first.
Sure. So of all of your characters, from Max Remy the Super Spy to India Wimple in the Spelling Bee books, is there a particular character of yours that's closest to your heart, and why?
Oh, gosh. I only know a novel is ready to be written when the characters start speaking to each other in my head. Like I see them engaging with each other. I see them, like I can see their facial expressions as they're telling someone else off or, describing something. So I only know a novel's ready when that happens. So by the time I even start a novel, I already know these kids. I love these kids because I can't anyway write a novel unless I have like a deep affection for these characters. So that is a hard question.
Yeah.
So, but I think that some characters who've had a big impact on my life. I love India Wimple from the Spelling Bee series because, she is shy and anxious, and it's because of something that happened to her when she was a little kid, but her parents believe in her and her whole country town believes in her, and it's just up to her now to believe in herself as well. And that kind of came about because I work with kids a lot, and in the last, I think, 5 to 10 years, I've seen levels of anxiety rise in kids, but I still totally believe you can do it. If you believe you can do this, you can. And so India Wimple's very special to me. Max Remy is because she was my first feisty girl hero at a time when there weren't a lot of feisty girl heroes in books as the lead characters. There are now. And I guess my other one would have to be Isabella Charm, who's the hero in the Grimston series. And I'm working on a pitch for the 3rd book in that series now. So Isabella in particular is right in the forefront of my head right now. She's the one who keeps appearing in my head as I'm trying to fall asleep at night. And even when I woke up first thing this morning, I saw Isabella and she was chatting to someone. I thought, oh, okay, I really just need to start writing this novel.
Oh, amazing. So in 2017, you were awarded a Koala Legend by the Koalas, the Kids' Choice Awards, along with Grimston being shortlisted. Plus, Teresa, a New Australian, was also shortlisted for the Western Australia Young Book Readers Award. What do awards like this mean to you, particularly as they're judged by kids?
There is nothing greater, seriously, when your book gets a nod, whatever that nod is, a little award, whatever it is out there that the world's saying, hey, we really like that. But there is something extraordinary when kids judge it. And there's a little bit of the girl from the western suburbs in Sydney still inside me. And anytime I get a notice that, that my books have been shortlisted on these kids awards, I kind of want to write to them and say, do you want to just double check that? Are you sure it was my book they wanted and not someone else's book? It is so heartwarming because, what it's like. You sit at your desk, you're on your own, you're coming up with these stories and characters. You know why you love them and why they excite you. But when kids write back, and they talk about their favorite moments in a book, or they just say, I want to be like that character one day. I feel like writing back and saying, yeah, you and me both. It's huge, and it's the biggest compliment you can get. And for me, the biggest reason why in my sort of darker, less secure moments that I think, maybe I should keep doing this. Maybe I should keep writing.
Yeah, I can imagine. It would be very, very motivational knowing the kids want more. And I understand you're just back from touring and speaking in some schools in Vietnam and Indonesia. I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about that and how your books were received there.
Oh, that was incredible. That was amazing. There was a school in Jakarta called the British School of Jakarta that I did visit a year ago, and they asked me to come back. And then a couple of schools I visited across 2 weeks in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. So there's always that little bit of trepidation that, I visit schools a lot in Australia. There's often I can sort of pick what daggy jokes the kids might laugh at, or my silly sense of humour, or my stories. And so there's a sense of, I never know exactly how a school visit's going to go, but I largely hope that it will go well if I do these certain things. But when you're in a different country and a different cultural background, and not only that, there were Vietnamese kids, Korean kids, Japanese kids, there were all sorts of kids kind of staring back at me, and I thought, will they get my sense of humour? Will they get my accent? But it was phenomenal. It was so lovely. And there's that moment for me in each session overseas where I just thought, you know what, they're just kids. And they love a good story, and hopefully if I tell these stories well enough, their eyes will light up and they'll get it. They'll get why stories and reading is just, of course, one of the most exciting things we can do.
Yeah, for sure. So your latest book, The Most Marvellous Spelling Bee Mystery, is out at the end of April, where India Wimple's off on a spelling bee adventure to London. How did you know that India Wimple had more stories in store after the first book? And I'm also wondering how the books have been received in places where spelling bees are really huge.
This was never supposed to be a series, in the same way that Grimston was never supposed to be a series. After I finished Grimston and after I finished The Stupendously Spectacular Spelling Bee, they were one-off books where I just had these characters who really came to life in my head, and I thought, I need to tell their story. And then when I finished, wrote the end for both of those books. I thought, well, that's done. I wonder what I'll do next. And both times, like after I finished Grimsden, I just got all these emails from kids saying, you have to tell us what happens next and what do the kids do after they leave the flooded city. And so I got so many emails that I kind of went to my publisher and said, do you mind if I come up with an idea for the second one? Because I keep getting harassed by these kids. And luckily they said yes. And the same with the spelling bee. I work at a school one day a week in Sydney, and I had these two little girls come up to me and say, we loved the stupendously spectacular spelling bee. What's going to happen next? And I just looked at them and said, nothing. It's one book. You know who wins. It's about a spelling bee that happens in Australia. You've read the book. You know what happens. What would I possibly write about next? And they looked at me like I was the least smart adult they'd ever met and said, the international competition. And I just thought, it is so smart and that is so clever. And I just said, can you leave it with me and I'll ring my publisher? So I did. I literally rang my publisher and said, what do you think about this? And she said, actually, I think that's a great idea. So the second book came about because of two little girls called Emma and Mia, and who have their dedication, rightly so, in the book. And it's the international competition. All the best spellers in the world get invited to London to have, to find out the world's greatest spelling champion. But while they're in London, there's a bit of skullduggery afoot, and there's a series of accidents that mean that it looks like the spelling bee is going to be cancelled. So India and her friends have to kind of band together and work out who's behind it, why, and how can they make the spelling bee go to grand final. And of course, the lovely thing is about these two books is they have been bought by the US. And the first one's just about to be published in the US, and the next one will come out next year. And it's lovely, and they've got lots of beautiful internal illustrations as well. And it's going to be this gorgeous hardback book. And spelling bees are huge in the US. They're pretty good here in schools. They're sort of starting to get a real, sense of place, spelling bees in schools in Australia. But there's a spelling competition over there called Scripps. And oh gosh, I can't remember now how long it's been going for, but it's huge. So it'll be really interesting to see how the books go. And the reviews for the first book have been kind of warm and fuzzy and quite lovely. So that's when you're sitting far, far away from your little girl who's been sent overseas, it's a huge relief to know that readers over there and so far the reviewers have been really loving India Wimple and her family.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Well, I wish you every success with that. I'm sure it'll be massive over there. And thank you so much for speaking with us today, Deb. Just before you go, can you tell us the best place for our listeners to find you online?
Oh, so there's my website, which is just deborahabella.com. And I do have an Instagram account, which is Deborah Abella. I sometimes jump on Twitter at Deborah Abella and do some things there. And I have a Facebook author page as well, where I mostly just post stuff, bookish things that I've been doing, and my latest trip to Vietnam. And so that's what you can find me.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. And thank you for speaking with us today, Deb.
You're welcome, Liz. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
That was a fantastic interview, Liz. I've heard Deb Abella speak a few times now, and it's always fantastic. She's got so much to talk about across a whole range of topics, and I know she does heaps of school talks, so if there's anyone out there in charge of arranging author visits for their school, I reckon she would be hard to pass up.
Yeah, she's awesome. And she's just got so much enthusiasm. It's almost contagious. You're just it makes me want to write. I mean, I want to write anyway, but it sort of helps with that as well. And so next episode, we've got a great interview coming up with you, Kate. Who are you talking to?
Yeah, next episode we're going behind the scenes at a publishing house, and we're speaking with Anna McFarlane from Allen and Unwin about her career and the books she loves and everything that goes into turning a manuscript into a finished product.
Awesome.
Cool, huh?
So you'll be able to pick her little brain for all the book goss.
I sure will.
Awesome. And speaking about good book goss, we are full of book goss here at One More Page. And now it's time for What You Readin'. Liz, you're up, chickadee. What's on the menu?
Well, I've just read an amazing new picture book called Go-Go and the Silver Shoes, and it's by one of my favourite picture book pairings. It's written by Jane Godwin and illustrated by Anna Walker and published by Penguin. It's about a girl named Go-Go with three big brothers. She wears hand-me-downs from the brothers and puts together outfits in her own creative way, but the one new thing she gets to choose, aside from undies, is shoes. And one day she chooses sparkly silver shoes that she must wear everywhere she goes, including on an adventure to the creek with her brothers. Sadly, she loses one of the shoes
in the water and is very cross with herself, but she loves the shoes so much she wears the remaining shoe anyway, even if she gets teased at school. The beautiful turning point of the story comes when a new girl arrives in Gogo's class and something amazing happens when she notices Gogo's odd shoe. This is a really charming story full of heart with stunning illustrations. I absolutely love Gogo's determination and creativity, and it's quickly become one of my all-time favourite picture books.
That's so cool. Can I read it after you? Because she sounds just like me. I had an older brother and all I ever got was hand-me-downs.
Oh, cute. And Gogo would be a great name for you.
Oh. Bit of a go-getter.
Yes. That'd be perfect. And we pretty much always know whenever a new picture book is out by Anna Walker, because we can pretty much hear Liz squealing all the way from her house to wherever we are around Sydney.
And then you have to wrestle the book out of her hands afterwards. Like, please, let me have a go. Let me have a go-go. See what I did there? So, Kate, what about you, young lady? What have you been reading?
I've been reading a book from Emily Connellan's Freedom Finder series, published by Allen and Unwin. It's a new series in a similar style to the classic kind of choose-your-own-adventure books that we would have had when we were kids. Do you remember those?
Yeah, totally. I was a massive fan of those. I really loved the dragon one.
Oh, what happens there? Do you get to be a dragon?
No, you had to like slay dragons and like there's a cave. Do you go in the cave or do you go around the cave? Big decisions like that.
Clearly you go in the cave, right? Because that's where the dragon's going to be.
Yeah, well, I guess if you want to live, you go around. But anyway.
True. Okay, so yeah. Basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with these types of books, at the end of every chapter, or maybe every second chapter, the reader has to make a choice, and you have to make the right choice to get to the end of the book safely. If you make the wrong choice, you can be pretty confident that you'll be dead within a couple of pages. Although the good news is you can always go back and try again. There are 2 books in this series already, with more to come, and the one I just read is called Break Your Chains. It's set in London and Van Diemen's Land in around the 1820s. The protagonist is a young girl of Irish heritage, and she's arrested shortly after her mother dies. You as the reader have to navigate all sorts of impossible choices to safely find her way to freedom in the end. I must say I did end up dead a couple of times, but I got there eventually. This is about a 250-page book, so it's kind of chunkier than you might be expecting if you're familiar with the genre. And you can see in the acknowledgements that heaps of research has gone into making it historically accurate. There's heaps of fact files at the back to provide historical information, and you have the opportunity to refer to those when you're making your decision. So if one of your characters has smallpox and you have to make a decision about what to do, it'll sort of give you the page to go to. You go to the back of the book and you can read a bit about smallpox before you make your decision. So the interactive element made this book a lot of fun, although there's also plenty of tragedy in it and some moral complexity too with some of the decisions. I would recommend this book for ages 10 and up.
Yeah, we actually got sent both the books and I stole the other one, Touch the Sun, and I'm only partway through it at the moment, but I think I've died like 4 times already.
Oh,
so
poor you.
I'm not doing very well. But I also resurrected myself 4 times, so,
Fantastic.
Winning. I was actually really surprised with how heavy it was. Like, my one's set in Somalia. You're a kid who's trying to, like, kind of be a reporter with his auntie, and there's terrorists around, and it's heavy stuff. And when I read about the author and how she worked in I think like immigration detention centers and immigration places, and got some of her story ideas from the people she worked with. Sorry if that's not exactly correct, but it's something like that. I was like, oh, okay, like it's coming from the old Choose Your Own Adventures where it was all like, oh, sorry, the dragon bit your head off, go back and start again, to like, yeah, actually running into some really heavy situations. I was quite moved by the whole thing.
Yeah, look, the one that I've been reading is this sort of similar, although it's probably about a century earlier in time or close to it, or even more actually, 1820, so a couple of hundred years earlier in time. But there is a lot of like, real life stuff that would have happened to somebody in those days. Like even just the fact of a 13-year-old girl getting arrested and the reality of those prisons and stuff. Like it's, trying to be fairly historically accurate about those descriptions. So it is, arguably some tough reading for some kids, but, I'm sure some, more mature kids would really, really get into this and be so interested in the facts of the stories.
But also like that's, kids these days maybe should know that life used to be a bit tougher for kids their age, or for kids in other countries, and a bit of brave writing for children is something to be commended, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. All right, Nat, what are you reading this week?
Well, I went a little lighter-hearted than that. So I got my middle grade on this week with the newest and final book from the Friday Barnes series, Friday Barnes Never Fear, by R.A. Spratt and published by Random House Australia. Now, speaking of literary legends, if you haven't experienced any Spratt in your life, you need to change that right now. I've seen her in person a few times, and she's absolutely hilarious, and that completely reflects in her writing. She doesn't pull any punches or censor herself for kids, and that's why we love her. We, as in kids and me. Her humour is spot on, silly, and yet somehow sophisticated, and with her background in TV writing, she has some of the best dialogue that you'll find in middle grade writing. Friday Barnes is a socially awkward but utterly brilliant girl detective. And this latest book in the series is about a new headmaster and a rumour of embezzled gold stashed on the school grounds. If you haven't read any Friday Barnes, go back and start at the beginning. There's a sense of tongue-in-cheek with R.A. Spratt, and she makes the reader feel like they're in on a joke with her from the very beginning. It's really cool. And the best thing is the entire series is out now, so when you fall in love with Friday Barnes, and you will, you can read the series from beginning to end and no waiting for the next one to come out.
Sounds fantastic. It's interesting. I didn't realise that R.A. Spratt had a background in TV writing.
Yeah.
Deborah Bella was saying the same thing, wasn't she?
That's right, with Cheese TV. So it's definitely a great training ground for being a kids writer.
Yeah, and Pamela Freeman as well has a background in TV writing, so they're going around.
I think it helps. Well, Liz and I actually did a writing course, didn't we, with R.A. Spratt?
We did.
Yeah, and
it was fantastic.
We had a good laugh, didn't we? And we were very inspired as well. She's hilarious.
Yes, for sure. So now it's time for our always exciting book giveaway. I love this part. So, Kate, what's our latest prize?
Well, you should get very excited this episode because courtesy of Readings, we actually have all 6 of the shortlisted titles for this year's book prize. They are Taran of the Mammoths, The Exile by Joe Sandu, Nevermore, The Trial of Morrigan Crow by Jess Townsend, Lin Tang and the Pirate Queen by Tamara Moss, The Boy, the Bird and the Coffin Maker by Matilda Woods, The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Metalstone by Jacqueline Moriarty, and Home Time by Campbell White.
Wow, that is a serious book pack. We'll need a crane to deliver that one. And I think the competition should just be if you can actually say all of the titles of those books without stumbling, you should just win it because there's some long book titles in there. But that's not the competition. To be in the running, you have to visit the competitions page on our website at onemorepagepodcast.com/win and tell us in 25 words or less who is your favourite legendary Australian author and why. Hey Liz, can you hear that?
What?
The sound of fun. The sound of hilarity. The sound of a cowpat fight on a sunny farm day. The sound of... Cage capers.
Wow. What do you have for us this episode, Nat?
Well, in this episode, we decided to introduce a bunch of kids to the legendary books of our own childhood. Each of us picked out one of our favourite books from when we were kids, so long ago. And we got some of our listeners to tell us what they thought.
Kids Capers!
Hello! My name is Indali, I'm 12 years old and I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I love hanging out with family, making comedy-style videos, musical theatre, English, and of course, books. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hating Alice and Ashley by the wonderful Robin Klein. Hating Alice and Ashley by Robin Klein is a classic book from 1984. It's in the Angus and Robinson's Kids Top 50 and personally one of my favourite books. Robin Klein describes extremely well family life, school chaos, and emotions based around the friendship and drama of the two main characters, Alice and Ashley and Erica Yerkin. Erica Yerkin, also known as Yuck, is a compulsive liar who creates stories about herself and her family to impress others. She told Alison that her brother was a monk, which clearly wasn't true when he arrived at the family barbecue in his underpants. Erica lives on the poor side of the street with a dysfunctional family. She dreams of one day becoming a movie star. She also believes that she is the school's best student, but is soon replaced by the oh-so-perfect Alice and Ashley, making Erica's jealousy directed towards Alison being so much better than her. Alison Ashley, the perfect girl. Intelligent, dignified, beautiful and posh, Erica makes it her mission to make a huge crack in her flawless life. Never-ending arguments, rivalry and hatred towards each other seemed like it went on forever. Allison, Erica's polar opposite, lives on the rich side of the road, in her perfect house, in her seemingly perfect world. I definitely relate a lot to the storyline. I think everyone has that one kid in school who's just a tad bit better than them. Erica is often alone, and being a hypochondriac, spends a lot of time in sickbay, eavesdropping on the teacher's hot gossip. I always eavesdrop in sickbay, although my teachers usually only talk about their husbands and their shenanigans while grocery shopping. Boring. Erica also has a dream of Broadway, something that I have always dreamt of. I often share the same feelings as Erica. For example, at her school camp, I thought my clothes were the best and others came in designer clothes, similar to what happened to Erica. Robin Klein reveals the problems that can occur when people don't fit into the rest of the community. The separations of the streets between rich and poor are exactly the same as where I live in Perth. One side lies the small and modest homes, and on the other, the successful, perfect mansions. As Hating Alice and Ashley was written 34 years ago, a lot of the technology was a bit funny to me. In their primary school, Baringa East, they used typewriters to write down information about students, and they used darkrooms for photography. There was no such thing as emails, but instead you wrote telegrams. I feel like in the modern world, this story would be a whole lot different, but I think that's one of the main aspects about the book that I enjoyed the most. It was still relevant to me, but the fact that it was dated made it a whole lot more fun and interesting to read, especially for kids my age. In my mind, I think that one of the main messages of this book is perfection. That there are always parts of your life that are perfect to others and some that you dislike yourself. Erica dreams of Allison's house and possessions and looks, but Allison dreams of Erica's family and loves that surrounds her. Robin Klein has done a great job conveying the theme that perfection comes in infinite types and that you shouldn't strive to be like anyone else because there is someone who loves you just the way you are and you should love yourself just the way you are. Hating Alice and Ashley is so funny, clever and enjoyable to read, and I would 110% recommend it to anyone who hasn't read this masterpiece.
Hi, my name is Charlie Rose. I'm 12 years old and from New South Wales. I love entertaining, especially writing cool stories for friends and family to read. I love reading adventure books, true mysteries and inspirational stories. Today, I've been asked to review a great classic Australian novel called Thunderwith by Livy Hathorn. Thunderwith is about a teenager called Lara who has recently lost her mother after she tragically passes away from cancer. She is forced to live with her father, or the man as her mother called him, on his farm willy-nilly. She hasn't seen her father since her infant years, but he now has a new family. 2 young daughters, Opal and Garnet, a baby boy, Jasper, and an older girl, Pearl. He and the younger kids welcome Lara warmly, but his wife Gladwin and Pearl treat her coldly. One day, Lara finds a dog who she feels a strong connection with. She names him Thunderwith because he came during a thunderstorm, and Lara says, "With thunder you come, and with thunder you go." The book explores Lara's struggles dealing with the loss of her mother, fitting into this new family, surviving her new high school, and her relationship with Thunderwith. I found Thunderwith to be a very entertaining read. There were some parts which were overly descriptive and not vital to the storyline, and it was at these times I struggled to remain interested. However, once I got through these parts, the story became so enjoyable that I couldn't even put the book down. My favourite part of the book was when Gladwin dropped the axe on her foot and the children, especially Lara, had to save her. I found it interesting that even though Lara helped her stepmother so much, Gladwin seemed to treat her with more and more disdain. When the truck ran off the road, it was really exciting, especially when 13-year-old Lara had to drive it all the way to a hospital in the village. I also loved when Lara found Thunderwith because of their special connection and the way that it made her so happy to finally feel that she belongs with somebody. Livy Hathorn has managed to write a story which is as relatable today as it was in the 80s. Not feeling that you can speak up when you're bullied is a problem that many teenagers are challenged with today, and that's exactly what Lara faced. I would recommend the book to people aged in their preteens all the way up to their adulthood because it's an enjoyable read once you're mature enough to understand the challenges that the book explores. So I recommend that you do yourself a favour and go borrow Thunderwith from the library, because I bet that you'll enjoy it as much as I did.
Hi, my name's Jade Breen. I'm 12 years old and I live in Canberra in the ACT. My favourite kinds of books are non-fiction or based on true stories, but today I have been asked to review Space Demons by Julian Rubinstein. It's easy to get into a good computer game, but with Andrew's Space Demon prototype, it happens literally. And once Andrew and schoolmates Ben, Ellie and Mario are locked in combat, their own resentments and rivalries escalate the game to a deadly level. Unless they can master themselves as well as the rules, the demons will wipe them out for real. First published in Australia in 1986, Space Demons is a book that will keep you up all night reading. So bookworms, get your torches ready. Andrew's dad comes home from Japan and brings Andrew a gift of Space Demons, a never-before-seen video game prototype. As the game progresses, Andrew and his friends Ben and Elaine get sucked into the game. They soon figure out that by responding to hate and shooting someone with a gun from the game, they can enter the world of Space Demons. The only way out is to win. Ben and Elaine both know that it is dangerous, but as Andrew continues to play the game, the three children are left with some all-too-real side effects. Julian Rubinstein's writing has left a mark on me. At first, I was reluctant to keep reading, but after a while, I was reluctant to stop. I think any child or adult can relate while reading this book. I know I could. All the characters are so diverse, and that's what I really liked about it. There is a girl who used to live with a travelling circus and can do acrobatics, a boy whose parents get divorced, a mean girl, and so many other characters. Because a big part of the book is set in a school, the difference between the characters makes the book more realistic, because in a real school, no one is exactly the same. Even though it was written ages ago, I wouldn't have noticed. Because there are no references to the time period, it could really be set any time. If you read something like Alice in Wonderland or Little Women, although they are both targeted to a younger audience, you can tell they were written a long time ago. The language in this book was easy to understand and not too hard to read. Another thing was that Rubinstein didn't go into depth about the gaming console. Something that would have given the time period away is if she had mentioned the type of gaming console the kids were using. Obviously the console wasn't an Xbox, as they had not been invented at the time the book was written. At least, I don't think they were. Because she hasn't mentioned this, the book feels timeless. Space Demons is an amazing story, and is suitable for almost all ages. This book is something I would never usually read, but I'm really glad I did. I would recommend it to anyone looking for an adventure book or a good classroom read.
Oh wow, they were all such fantastic reviews. I'm so happy one of my childhood favourites, Hating Alice and Ashley, is still being enjoyed by kids today, and the others as well. So for this episode, we've received a listener question via our website. It's from Amanda, who's a teacher from New South Wales, with a question from one of her students. They ask, why is editing my work so important? It's like a chore. So we were lucky enough to have Deb Abella with us today. And Deb, are you able to answer this one for us?
Oh, yes, I can. You know, and the sad news is a little bit, Amanda, for your student, is that it actually does feel like a chore sometimes. But it is so important. I will constantly say to kids, I would prefer not to be published than my first drafts be published, because they're just not good enough. My first draft is me kind of messily fumbling through a beginning, middle, and end, and roughly trying to get the bones of the novel in place, or the kind of mechanics and the structure of it. Then for me, my second draft and third draft even is just almost about moving Lego blocks. You know, in order for this scene to pay off in the end and have as much impact as it can, do I need to build up to it a bit more? Do we know these characters more? Do they appear early enough in the scene? So it's all about structural stuff. You know, is this going to stand up? Will this building, be able to stand up? And then what you do, so that's hard. I find the second and third drafts kind of quite tough, but then there's something that clicks into place for me for the drafts that come after that. And what that is just the novel now is clicking. It works. I know it's working and I know all the things are in place, but now it's polishing it. Is that the best way for that character interaction to happen? Do we get to know this character well enough through her actions and through what she says? And do we, is there any way I can improve this on really small levels, just on language, interaction with characters? And so that lovely, lovely polishing goes on and until you then have this lovely piece of work that in some ways, for me, and this is certainly true of some of my novels, really is very different from that first draft. The first draft is just the bones of something, but the last draft is the whole feast, the whole meal laid out in front of you, candles, the whole table filled with gorgeous smelling food. Whereas the first draft isn't that. It's not as tempting and it's not as appetizing because you haven't been able to really take it to its full potential.
Oh, fantastic answer. And I think as a writer, especially as an aspiring writer, a new writer, it's so important to get those sort of messages that your first draft doesn't have to be fantastic, and usually it'll need a whole lot of polishing to get it to the right stage. And I find that for picture books too. Like, they're only 400 or 500 words, but I can have like Rev 15, Rev 16,
Totally.
because you've been through so many revisions of it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with said child at school. It's such a chore, but it's a necessary chore. Like washing your underwear. Has to be done.
Now it's time to find out what's on our radar. Something we've just discovered, something we're looking forward to, or something that we're obsessing over. Nat, what's on your radar at the moment?
So we stumbled across this at the Creative Kids Tales Festival, which, by the way, if you want to write for kids, you should definitely check them out. We'll pop their details in the show notes too. But we came across the 2018 Wombat Books Illustration Challenge. So if you are or have a budding illustrator, make sure you enter this one. So it's open to school-age kids from 5 to 18, and it's an opportunity to be published in a professionally produced kids' book. The theme is around Australia in 30 places, and the text is on the website, so it gives you an idea of what it is that you're supposed to draw. And if our episode 2 competition entries were anything to go by, we are going to have some real contenders for this comp. How good was our winning entry from Millie of Stitchhead?
It was cool. I loved that.
She's so talented.
Really
and
awesome.
Yeah, and she even got a congrats from the Stitchhead author and illustrator Guy Bass and Pete Williamson on Twitter, which was super cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, listen, guys, it's been great, but I think it's time to stop talking about books and get out there and read some. I know I've got the entire shortlist of the Readings Children's Book Prize to get through for starters.
And then I want to borrow it after you.
Okay.
And then... Hang on, how come I'm always last?
Just too slow, Nat.
Oh, that's true.
So don't forget that next episode we'll be talking to children's publisher Anna McFarlane from Allen and Unwin. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes. It's easy to do and it really helps us out.
And tell your friends, colleagues, kids and house pets about us. Or jump on social media, follow us and share our stuff because it gets us out there into the world. We can never have enough listeners. And if people are listening, then we'll keep talking. Mostly because we love the sound of our own voices. And if you do too, then join us next fortnight for...
One More Page!
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Page. Read the show notes and find all our episodes at www.onemorepagepodcast.com. Don't forget, you can also subscribe via the iTunes Store or your favourite podcast app.
We love to receive listener questions and hear any kids' book news or reading recommendations. Chat with us on our Facebook page or find us on Twitter and Instagram at OneMorePageAU. You can also email us at onemorepagepodcast@gmail.com.
A big thank you to Marianne Koo, who does all of our illustrations. That's it from us this time, but we hope you can join us next time for one more episode of One More Page.
I know you guys always love to stick around for bloopers time. Well, we must be getting better because there seems to be less. But this time, we got Kate. The moment when Kate realises she's actually forgotten to copy and paste the titles of the books that we're giving away into the script.
We actually have all 6 of the shortlisted titles for this year's Readings Children's Book Prize, which are... Okay.
Seriously, dude. It says it right there. Bracket, list the books, bracket.
Alright. Anywho.
Kate, epic fail.